Okay, we're now in our next group. This is the hills and valleys group. We're going to have some little anthill shapes, so we're going to be able to kind of curve up and then over and down. And then we're going to also have some valley shapes where we will come down, have a nice big dip down before going back up. To do both of these shapes, we're going to be starting at the writing line. And we're going to do an overhand curve. So for a lot of our other shapes, we kind of have gone along the bottom line and then kind of slanted up for our kite strings. This time we're going to start by going up a little bit more and then over and then back down, right? So as soon as we get up to that midline, go over and back down. For the valley, we're going to do the same type of thing. We're going to do that more of an overhand curve, get up to that midline, and then go back down to that bottom line. But then we want to go over a little along that bottom line before going back up to have that valley. All right, let's start the first letter in our hills and valleys group. Our first letter is the letter N. Now the letter N is just going to be using our hills. Now our letter N starts at our writing line. Going to do that overhand curve up to that midline and then down. And then we're going to trace back up that line to that midline, curve over and down again. So we're going to have two hills. When we get to that bottom line, curve up and release for a tail. Now, just to make sure everybody knows why this N kind of looks like a print M because it has two humps. Remember that in cursive, we have to have this beginning tail to be able to connect to any letters that came before. So this is really the letter N right here. This part before is the part that would connect to any letters that would come before the letter N. And this is the tail that would connect to any letters that would come after the letter N. So in cursive, the letter N has two humps. So a way to think about that is you want to make sure that you are coming down and having two downward strokes. So we start at the bottom line, curve up and over and down. That's one down, back up, curve over and down, and then have our tail. There's our N. One more time, hill, over and down, trace back up, hill, over and down, and then our tail. And there's the letter N. The next letter is the letter M. If you can do the letter N, you can do the letter M. We're just going to have one more hump. So just like in print, an N has one hump and an M has two humps. In cursive, the letter N has two humps. The letter M is going to have one more for three humps. So we're going to start at the bottom. Let me move my hand a little bit more. Start at the bottom. We're going to do an overhand curve up to that middle line, over and down. Trace back up, curve over and down. Trace back up, curve over and down. And then there's our tail. And again, just as a reminder, why does an M have three humps? Because this first part is just the connector to any letters that would come before. So there is the letter M with the bits that are connecting, the tails that are connecting. So again, starting at the writing line, overhand curve up to the midline, down, trace back up, curve over and down, trace back up, curve over and down, tail. One down, two down, three down. There is the letter M. All right, the next letter we're going to do is the letter V. The letter V is going to be using both the hill to start off and then have the valley. So we're going to start at that bottom. All right, so we're going to start here. We're going to do our overhand curve up to that midline and then down. And then we're at that bottom line. We're going to move over a little bit and back up. So there's our valley. Now the letter V also has a bridge connector. So we're going to come back down a little bit and then out and over. We want to make sure that that letter V has that bridge connector so it ends near the middle. Let's try that again. Starting at the bottom, overhand curve up a little bit, over and down, along the bottom line a little bit, up, and a bridge connector. Now you might be thinking, why do we want to have this kind of going along the bottom? It's just the way that it is. If you have a little bit less, that's okay too. But in print, the V is very pointy. In cursive, letters are much more curved and rounded. And so we have a little bit more of a rounded area on the bottom. So one more time, at the bottom, up, there's our hill, over for our valley, back up, and then our bridge connector. Make sure you have that bridge connector for the V. Otherwise, it might look a little like a letter U, even though we remember the letter U doesn't have any of that space in front of it like a hill, because it uses those kite strings up and trace back down. So make sure you have that open front in front of the V for that hill, and then also that bridge connector. And that's the letter V. Our next letter is going to be the letter Y. All right, we're going to use both our hill and our valley. We're going to start at the bottom. We're going to do an overhand curve up to that middle and then down, and then our valley along the bottom and then back up. But here, we're going to trace back down the line we just came up, and then we're going to hook underneath our Y that we've already done, and then we're going to finish off with our tail. So there is the letter Y. Again, we're going to start off with our hill, starting at the bottom, curve up and over, then our valley, and then trace back down, and then do our loop, and then our tail. One more time. Our next letter is the letter X. It's going to use a hill, part of a valley, and even in the print X, you have to pick your pencil up and go and cross the X. We're going to need to do the same thing in our cursive. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off at the bottom, of course, and we're going to overhand curve up to the middle line, and then we're going to go down, and then there's our hill. Now, one thing that's different with our coming down part of our hill, this time we want to make sure we have a wide hill, because we're going to need to come back and cross our X at the end. Once we get to the bottom of our hill, then we're going to come back up for our tail just a little bit. So it's just a very shallow valley. All right, so one more time. I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to go up and over, and I want to have a pretty wide hill, and then curve up. And you might be saying, wait a minute, this doesn't look much like an X. Well, of course, we need to go back and cross the X. And the way that we do that is we come to the midline, kind of right about where the bottom touches the writing line, come up here, and then we're going to do a diagonal line and connect it to the bottom writing line over here. So again, here and cross. One more time. Something to be thinking about, the crossing of the X, the dotting of the I or the J, the crossing of the letter T, all happens after you have completed the word. So if we are writing the word mixture, there's my M, 3 humps, kite string I, here's my X, there's my hill, my little valley, there's my X, can't really see it until I come back and cross it at the end, then up into my T, tall kite string, my U, 2 short kite strings, an R, E, little loop. Now I can come back and dot my I, cross my X, and cross my T. And there's mixture. All right, let's work on that last letter in the hills and valley group. It is the letter Z. The letter Z in cursive doesn't look much like the print letter Z. So we have to make sure we are practicing it and drawing it correctly, since it doesn't seem as familiar as some of the other letters that look similar to their other print partner. All right, the letter Z. Of course, we're going to start off at the bottom writing line, and we're going to start off with a hill. This hill is going to be very similar to the other hills we've done, but when we finish the hill, we're going to kind of curve in a little bit. We're going to bend in. So we're going to do an overhand curve up to the middle line, and then we're going to come down. And then as we're coming down, we want to kind of go back towards where we started. So see how that hill kind of bends in? So we have one hill, and then for the Z, we have to do another hill, just another little baby hill right next to it. And after we finish this hill, we're going to continue, and we're going to go down below the line, and we're going to do one of those little hooks. So we're going to go here and then have our tail. And there is the letter Z. So we're going to have a big hill and a little hill, big hill, little hill, and then an underhand hook and tail. Letter Z, big hill, little hill, under hook and tail. And there is the letter Z.